Banjo-Kazooie is a timeless classic from the golden era of both rare and 3D platforming, but I've admittedly only played it once before. I borrowed it from a neighbor as a kid, completed it, and then returned it and bought Banjo-Tooie. It wasn't until just recently that I finally added a copy to my collection, so today I'm playing through it again, but this time with Retro Achievements enabled. The big thing to know is that because Retro Achievements is effectively a memory viewer, having the correct version and region is very important. You have to be playing on a USA region Rev 0 version for Retro Achievements to work, otherwise the memory address values won't line up properly. My Rev 0 version doesn't have the player's choice logo, and on the back you only have the two numbers. A Rev 1 version will have the player's choice logo and an additional letter on the back imprint. Then in game you have some giveaways such as the logo on the turbo trainers being different, and the text placement on the game over screen being in a different location. Side note, there is in fact an achievement for viewing one of the most iconic game over sequences in all of gaming. But the next order of business is going to be the missable achievements in the set. Only 4 out of 60 achievements are missable, but you definitely want to prepare for all 4 so you don't have to do a second playthrough. For Steel Lungs, you have to swim to Clanker, talk to him, and then free him without surfacing for air or collecting any of the bubbles. But it's not as bad as it sounds because once you get down to the bottom, you can just flutter in circles to the key. The next missable achievement is going to be Witch Exterminator, which is earned by defeating Grunty without taking any damage. This is missable because you can't rematch the final boss, and it's a pretty tough challenge too, but we'll go over strategies to make this battle easier near the end. Missable achievement number 3, What's a Hollow Honeycomb, is a notoriously controversial one. You get it by completing the game without ever extending the life bar, and this is why checking missables first is pretty important, because looking at the comments, a number of people only learned about this achievement's existence several levels into their run. If you accidentally collect a single empty honeycomb, it's fine, you just can't collect 6 or more to extend the life bar. And don't unlock that red honeycomb upgrade at the end until after defeating Gruntilda. As many of you have likely concluded, you can just stack this with the Witch Exterminator achievement and get both at once. But rather than wasting the next 5 minutes assessing why this achievement is or isn't a big deal, I'll just let people duke it out in the comments section instead. And then the final missable achievement is for collecting every single Mumbo token in the game. Kind of. The one missable token to keep track of is in Gobi's Valley, in this room right here. You have to collect this one before grabbing the Jiggy and draining the water. And in the off chance you miss the one in Gobi's Valley, you could go as far as to perform the reverse B adventure glitch to save the run by flying up to it, though I'm not going to cover that in this video. And because the main game without achievements only requires 75 tokens for you to get every single transformation, many of you may not have noticed that there are actually 116 Mumbo tokens in the game, but the achievement only requires 114. The reason why this achievement is designed this way is because of some good old-fashioned coding issues. 2 pairs of tokens share the same ID, meaning that in certain circumstances, collecting one can despawn the other. So in other words, by design this achievement will only punish you for your own mistake, but not the mistake of a programming error beyond your control. And the first pair of glitch tokens are going to be in Mad Monster Mansion, with the token in the cellar and the token in the toilet. Collecting one will despawn the other. However, if you break open the barrel in the cellar first but don't collect it yet, and then run to the toilet and grab that Mumbo token, you can then go back to the cellar and collect that, and you'll properly obtain both. And the other glitch token is in Click Clock Wood in the spring. There's a token near the top of the tree and then another below it in the brambles. Collecting the former and then leaving the level will just spawn the one in the brambles, so just make sure to collect both in the same level run. But a final important note regarding the Mumbo tokens, if you're playing with Retro Achievements enabled, you can take advantage of the status update to see how many tokens that you've collected in a level. And this saved me a lot of time when trying to find the final few that I was missing. But with all missables and caveats established, let's finally begin the run. And of course, because of the previously mentioned Hollow Honeycomb achievement, we're going to skip collecting those for now. So next up is a new achievement type on top of the standard 100% completion, and that's finding every single extra life in an area within a single session without losing a life. Spiral Mountain has 2, both of which are in plain sight. There's also a minigame you can play here with achievements tied to it, but I'm going to save that for the very end out of personal preference. We proceed like normal through Mumbo's Mountain, and outside of the standard 100% completion, the only new challenge here is finding the 2 extra lives, one in a hut and one on top of the tower. If you need a guide for standard 100% completion, I'll link to a guide in the description, but as always, we're more so focused on the new challenges that Retro Achievements brings forth. For token tracking purposes, there are 5 Mumbo tokens in this level, which is just enough to transform. So next up is Treasure Trove Cove, which has always been one of my favorite levels. This time there are 3 extra lives, and if you've been following along from the beginning, you'll likely also collect a separate achievement for reaching 9 lives at this point. For Mumbo tokens, you have 10 in this level, but nothing is too hard to find just yet. Then you have the achievement To Infinity and Beyond for reaching the very top of Treasure Trove Cove. The real top. And finally, you have a ton of achievements related to entering codes in the sandcastle, and there is an argument to be made that for efficiency purposes, entering at least the stop and swap codes now is a better way to go about things, but I'm going to save this all for its own section near the very end. So after wrapping up, we head to Clanker's Cavern. As mentioned before, there is a missable achievement for freeing Clanker without surfacing for air or using the bubbles. There's only 5 Mumbo tokens in this level, and amusingly enough, I completely forgot about this one underwater to the right of Clanker, making this the very last one I found for the achievement. Then for the extra lives, conveniently enough, all 3 are located in the same area where Clanker is. But while this level is relatively easy achievement-wise, the next level, Bubblegloop Swamp, just so happens to have one of the hardest achievements in the entire set. If you've played this game before and are interested in playing with retro achievements, your exact thoughts are probably something along the lines of, please don't let it be related to Mr. Vile's minigame. And I regret to inform you that it most certainly is related to Mr. Vile's minigame. After collecting the Jiggy from him, he gives you a new challenge, to defeat him 3 rounds in a row in order to earn 3 extra lives. But if you lose or even tie a single round, he'll attack you and take a life. You can attempt to run away, but you'll rarely be able to pull that off. As you might imagine, the achievement is for completing the optional portion of this minigame, but that's only the first part. You're also not allowed to use the turbo trainers. So the thing that makes Mr. Vile so infamously frustrating is his rubber band AI, that causes him to really speed up once he starts falling behind, causing him to catch a lead that you may not be able to recover from in time. So the first tip is to start out slow. Purposely trail behind him for the first portion of each round, and then his rubber banding will cause him to go pretty slow. And then that's when you can go crazy devouring everything in order to secure that lead until time runs out. The second tip is to understand his attack pattern. He will always pursue the closest target to him, and will redirect if a closer one pops up. So if you know where he's going to move next, you can take advantage of his increased speed by positioning yourself in front of him so that he pushes you into the target and that you can eat it before he can. On a similar note, sometimes you're just going to know that he's going to make it to a target before you can, and you can ignore it and move ahead to the next group. Which brings us to our final tip, which is only for round 3. The color that you need to eat constantly swaps. This will occur every 10 seconds, including as the timer goes from 1 to 0. So while Mr. Vile has to wait for the swap to occur to begin chasing the new target, you can look at the time, see that it's only a second or 2 from a color swap, and then begin pursuing a new group of targets before Mr. Vile has a chance to change course. And that timer change was how I was able to finally snag the win after numerous failed attempts. The extra lives that you earn from Mr. Vile's minigame aren't related to the level achievement at all, so then you have 2 more lives to find throughout Bubblegloop Swamp. Then you have 10 Mumbo tokens to find in this level, and after wrapping everything else up minus the hollow honeycomb, don't forget to go behind the level entrance to get the first code from Cheeto. Then moving on to Freezeeezy Peak, achievement wise there's not too much to say about this level. You have 10 Mumbo tokens to find, and then for the extra lives, there's only 3, all within the same progression path. You have 1 above Mumbo's skull, 1 nearby Wazza's cave, and then 1 inside Wazza's cave. This is also the one instance in the game where you're required to backtrack in order to complete everything, because you need the turbo trainers from Gobi's Valley for the rematch with Boggy. So between the 2 visits, wrap everything else up, and then we're off to Gobi's Valley where you'll learn how to use the turbo trainers, and then get an achievement for unlocking every single move. There are 10 Mumbo tokens in this level, and once again there's a permanently missable one inside this pyramid, so make sure to obtain it before grabbing the Jiggy and draining the water. Also for the extra lives, note that there's a risk of dying because one of them is inside the maze which has a timer to it. The other 2 are easy enough though. Not too much else to say about this level for now, so next up is Mad Monster Mansion. And once again, there's a bug with a pair of tokens in this level, but missing one by despawning it won't ruin your chances of getting the achievement. But if you want both, break open the barrel in the cellar, collect the one from inside the toilet, and then come back to the cellar for that token. Despite this programming oddity, I wouldn't call either one of these the worst token in the game. That honor belongs to a different token within Mad Monster Mansion. Nearly every single token in this game, no matter how well hidden, is at least visible and sparkling from some angle. There are 2 exceptions to this rule. The ones hidden inside the snowman, which at least have giant red X's on them, and the other one is right here. There's no real indication that this enemy here is hiding a Mumbo token, but it is there and you need the Wonder Wing to defeat it. This one token took me more time to find than any other one by a long shot. But anyways, moving on, there are 3 extra lives, and this time they have some pretty decent hiding spots. But after wrapping everything else up, make sure to use a pumpkin to get the second Cheeto spell, and to locate the first water switch. Speaking of which, as you locate the remaining switches, just know that if you wait too long to break this grill, you can lose access to this shortcut permanently unless you use a code to open it back up. And eventually, we're at Rusty Bucket Bay, home to everybody's least favorite pair of Jiggies thanks to the engine room. In order to not lose a precious high note score or an extra life streak, I always tackle this section first. Near the back of the ship is an entrance to a switch that occasionally slows down several propellers. The entrance is through this door, and then you have to very carefully make your way through for the notes, tokens, extra life, and first Jiggy. Then you pound these 2 switches and race to the propellers in the back for a second Jiggy. After that, the rest of the level isn't too bad, it just has some well-hidden secret areas. And since we already got the first extra life in the engine room, the second one is going to be in this storage hut, and then the final one is going to be in this crate after defeating the boom boxes. Then for the Mumbo tokens, there are 15, but the one that's probably going to trip a lot of you up is going to be here in the room with the bunk beds, because you can't actually see it from most viewing angles. Then as long as you know that you can jump down some of these periscopes and know that you can break out some of these windows, you should be able to find everything else just fine so long as you explore every nook and cranny. And after you complete the rest of the level, remember to grab the final Cheeto spell by raising the water level to the highest point, and then swimming back to the area outside Rusty Bucket Bay within the time limit. Then after going through an entire sequence to find the switch to unlock the Click-Clock Wood puzzle, we make our way to the final main level. And to break things down a bit, for notes you have 4 outside the spring door, 16 in the spring, summer, and winter areas, and then 48 in the autumn area. Then the Jinjos have 1 in each season, with the second one in the spring. For Mumbo tokens, you once again have a glitched pair in the spring. Collect them both in one go without leaving the level, but you won't be locked out of the achievement otherwise if you mess up. And there are 25 tokens total, 8 in the spring, 7 in the summer, and 5 in both autumn and winter. And although it took me a good while to find every last Mumbo token in this level, especially because of the one in Mumbo's hut in the summer, it was nowhere near as long as it took me to actually comb through all of my gameplay footage to locate the collection segments and edit this portion of the video. Then for the extra lives, this time you're going to have 12, and I would definitely save these for the end so you don't lose a note score or anything. You're going to have 4 in spring, 3 in summer, 3 in autumn, and then 2 in winter. The room at the top will contain lives for the first 3 out of 4 seasons, and accounts for 4 out of the 12 lives. But for the most part, none of the extra lives should pose too much of a problem until you get to the winter, because the final one is going to be hidden under the ice, and you lose air twice as fast in the cold water. So you have to quickly swim into Naughty's house to recover, and then quickly swim to the final life. Then by taking advantage of a glitch, you actually can swim to safety afterwards. So then after wrapping everything else up and then using the B-Banjo to grab the final Jiggy in Gruntilda's lair, you should now have all 90. We then make our way through Grunty's Furnace Fun, and thankfully there's no additional challenges added as an achievement. So after winning, we make our way to the top of the tower and then open up the bonus doors. Remember that for what's a hollow honeycomb, you can't use the red honeycomb power-up yet. Then after activating the cauldron at the end, you should have found them all by now and you'll get an achievement for that. Which means that now it is time to take a quick break in the action before facing Gruntilda. We go all the way back to Spiral Mountain to take on the Bottle's bonus minigames where you complete a series of jigsaw puzzles within the time limit. And as you get to later levels, you'll have to rotate more pieces to get them to fit. Naturally, some basic tips would be to start with the corners and edges, to look for key objects to line up with the pieces, and see which way the pieces are panning in relation to the main puzzle to know how to rotate them. But there's one other important tip. The pieces all start in the exact same place and position each time, so you can just memorize them. Once I realized this, none of them took more than a few attempts. So then we head back to the Sandcastle and Treasure Trove Cove, and enter the codes for the Cheeto spells, Bottle's bonus codes, and stop and swap items. And given that the phrases are incredibly long and you have to ground pound out each letter, I was here for a good long while. But eventually we unlock everything, and after that we take a brief moment to ensure that we found all 10 Mumbo tokens and all 7 lives scattered throughout Grunty's lair, not including the 3 from Grunty's Furnace Fun. The Mumbo tokens within Gruntilda's lair were all relatively easy to find, with many of them being in plain sight and at least one of them being visible in a cutscene. But inversely, finding all the extra lives took me a good while. Some of them were in some incredibly well hidden locations, and it's really neat to see how the developers rewarded exploration. This is also one of the things that I like about Retro Achievements as a whole, in that it teaches you things about the game that you may have otherwise never known. So now we're on to the big challenge of this set, defeating Gruntilda without taking any damage. How hard could it be? Yeah, this one took me a few dozen attempts. The big thing to know is that the fireballs are designed to predict where you're going to be based on your current speed and direction, meaning that the key to winning is to constantly mix up your speed and direction. In my case, I would stand still and take off after the fireball was thrown so that I could safely get to the spot that I needed to be. And with that knowledge in mind, phases 2, 4, and 5 are suddenly tolerable. Then for the magnet spell, you either have to use the Wonder Wing or abuse the invincibility frames from a ground pound in order to dodge the attack. And given the fact that you're allowed to use the egg and feather upgrades for this achievement, I played it safe and just stuck to the Wonder Wing. And then phase 1 can actually be accelerated by spamming eggs to hit her multiple times. So really that just leaves phase 3 and the semi-wonky flight controls as the hardest phase in my opinion. Especially because I had several instances where the fireball hit me right before phase 4, costing me the run. So after getting the hang of everything, I made my way to phase 4 thinking I had a real chance this time, but then... Turns out there is the occasional glitch that makes the Jinjo statue not respond to you shooting it, meaning that you're soft-locked and have to start all over. As you might imagine, I took a nice break after that bullshit. But after a good night's rest and an easy day of work, I finally got it after several attempts. If you want to see the full unedited 9-minute battle, you can find it for free on my Patreon, but here I'm just going to show phase 5 so that a viewer has a general idea of how to dodge the fireballs effectively. So that was an incredibly tough, but still very fair achievement, and seeing multiple big achievements unlock all at once was incredibly satisfying. And while some may say that collecting the empty honeycombs and stop and swap items is an anticlimactic way to finish the set, I would say it was actually the perfect victory lap to unwind with, as all the full level clear achievements popped up within minutes of each other. We then finish up with the final health upgrade, and our achievement hunting journey for Banjo-Kazooie is complete. Now, there is a subset available which serves as a glitch showcase, but I'm not going to attempt it, because while it does look fun, you need both the NTSC and PAL versions of the game to complete the full set, and I just don't feel like buying a second copy of the game. But with the main set done, we've now opened up the door to an entire world of Banjo-Kazooie hacks to one day try out on this channel. So if you have a favorite one that you want me to check out, let me know in the comments. Until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day.